Hey guys, it's Danny. I am back. Sorry for not posting last week. It's been a little busy, but we're back in business, hopefully. And today I'm gonna take you along as we perform a repot on this orchid. It's supposed to be one of the easiest repots ever. You'll see why. However, I have a feeling today is one of those days when I'm extremely clumsy and we're catching it on video, because one thing that I already did was I moved the tray and the orchid fell over and I snapped a root tip. At least one. I think just one. So yeah, we did not start well because I actually intended for these roots to be intact by the end of today's mission, but that's not gonna happen. Nothing will deter us from our mission. It happens. It is what it is. We're gonna push through. So this is the wonderful Rudsta Fancy Warm Welcome Cattleya type orchid, which decided not to bloom. I talked about it in a different video. It was supposed to be her first bloom and the buds just rotted inside the sheath, because why wouldn't they? If you have the option, why wouldn't you choose to rot inside the sheath? I'm kidding. I'm feeling sarcastic today. Right, so I kind of postponed repotting because I wanted to see the buds, but luckily for us, that's not gonna happen, so we can go ahead and repot. And one of the things you might notice with this orchid is that it's already starting to climb out of its pot, which is a perfect moment to repot this orchid and actually compress it a little bit, make it a little bit tinier. One thing that I usually do with Cattleyas that get a little bit out of hand is I remove the older growth and I keep a few pseudobulbs, pretty much make a division of the newer growth. In that way, I conserve space in my tiny orchid room. And also, appearance-wise, I also believe it's gonna look better. As most of us know, Cattleyas, or some of them, don't really have the most magical of growth patterns. Yeah, so personally, I like to keep them as tidy and tiny as possible, because I really do not have space for specimen Cattleya types. All right, so let's just sanitize a little bit the pruners. I don't know where my spray is, so I'm just gonna use this bottle of alcohol. Before anything, we shall get rid, first of all, of the spent flower spike, so it's not in our way, and we need to cut the rhizome. I'm not going to remove this orchid from its pot or the back division, because I might give it away. But what I want to do is remove, first of all, the new pseudobulb, which is also having a new growth here started. Since the flowers are just not going to happen, might as well grow a new growth. But I want to take with this, at least this pseudobulb. I'm going to aim for the one in the back as well. If it's not possible, it's fine. Because we have a new growth on the way and roots, it's okay if I make a division with two pseudobulbs. I have enough stored energy in these two. I have roots on the way, it's fine. But if at all possible, I'm gonna take this growth as well, even if it doesn't have roots. I'm not interested in the roots. I'm pretty much interested in its storage capacity, pretty much. So I'm gonna go in from above and try to follow the rhizome, see where it starts, where it's ending, and where is the perfect point for me to cut. It will be right here in between these two sections. When I do my cut, I will cut closer to this pseudobulb, the old pseudobulb, just so I don't risk removing any parts of the pseudobulb I want to keep. I'm gonna place my pruners on a vertical and push a little bit so that I know the rhizome is in between my blades, and cut. That sounded like a very good cut, right? At this point, yeah, this orchid, these pseudobulbs do have some roots inside the pot. My hope was that I could just remove this entire section without having to disturb this older section. I did it before with a different orchid that I want to give away, so the old section wasn't even disturbed, but this might not be the case. There is only one root, one or two roots holding us back. No point in disturbing the other section of the orchid. Yeah, there we are. It was just that one root. So my plan worked. And this is why I call this the easiest repot you can perform. Because if you have no use for the older section, it's up to you what you're gonna do. You can toss it as it is and pot this one, or give this one away. It is a perfectly good division, and because it has not been removed from here, it's not gonna suffer any setback. It will produce new growth from one of the older pseudobulbs, and new eye will swell, will start to wake up. No issue. This one you can give away. It's perfect. This one needs potting, and this technique is best done when you have new roots. Now, I waited a little bit too much with this division. I would have preferred the roots to be tinier because now I need to make a balancing game of not actually damaging these roots, but I waited for the buds. I thought it would actually bloom, but it didn't. It happens. First blooms are not the greatest. So the amount of roots we have on this orchid is enough for now, and particularly because we have brand new roots, all we have to do is make sure we are careful with repotting. So this technique, as I was saying, is best done when you see new roots like this on your orchid. Don't wait for them to get this long, if you can, if you don't have a flower on the way. But you know, in the case of my orchid, I have to do this. Let me just remove these sheets just so I don't have mealybugs hiding. English, Danny. Hiding in there. I haven't filmed in a little bit. I lost my touch, which is funny because I speak in English all the time. I do speak English more than I speak Romanian, which is my native language, and definitely much more than I speak Greek. It's just not sticking to me, you guys. I understand it, like most of the times in basic conversations, and when I go grocery shopping and stuff, I can ask for what I need, but like having a meaningful and more complicated conversation is out of the question for me in Greek. It does not stick in my brain. Something is wrong. I don't know. So luckily for me, this is a country where people speak a lot of English. So wherever Greek does not help me, English does. So yeah, I'm making valiant efforts. I'm failing, but I am trying. Okay, I have a root here that is still alive, but it's broken. With Cattleyas, it's not a good idea to hold on to that segment because it will probably not make it. Cattleyas, in my opinion and experience, have some of the most sensitive roots in the orchid kingdom. No question about it. I keep pushing my little tablecloth here. Right, so I'm gonna go find a suitable pot for this orchid. It's a big orchid, and I definitely need a pot at least as big as this one, because when I purchased it, it was tiny. It was quite a young plant. Do you see the difference in the size of growths? Yeah, so we need quite a bigger pot, maybe one even bigger than its initial pot, which is a little paradoxical, right? When you do divisions, you usually choose smaller pots. Well, you know, life is full of nuances. This was a young orchid, it is now fully mature, and even if I divide it, I cannot put it in the same size of pot. I cannot definitely put it in a smaller pot, so I'm considering a larger pot just to give me at least 2 years of growth in that pot. So let me see what I have available. Alright, so found the perfect pot, and the potting mix will be my typical potting mix. For those of you who are new or who don't know, I use a combination of sphagnum moss and bark for the past, I think, 5 years at this point. I'm sticking to it. I'm done experimenting. I kind of know what's working in my environment and what isn't, and sphagnum moss works. And because sphagnum moss, you know, is not that easy to acquire, I am watering it down a little with the bark, which not the cheapest in my area either, but you know, it's fine. It works out. So the bottom layer will be sphagnum moss because it absorbs whatever water accumulates on the bottom of my decorative pots. And I'm going to arrange my orchid. I'm gonna have to like press a little bit on the new roots, and no, they will not get easier to maneuver if I soak them because they are quote-unquote aerial roots. They, for now, are not capable of absorbing much water. They will not green up if they touch water, and I put some water on them because I just washed this pot, and they don't green up at all, so they don't absorb water right away, which means they will not soften a little bit if you put water on them. The roots will soften when they start to absorb and become more saturated with water, and that's what makes them more flexible, because this velamen, the outer layer of the velamen, is a layer of dead cells. It's dried cells, and whenever you have a dry something, it's harder to manipulate. Is that the right word? It's harder to put into place, right? It's harder to bend. It's gonna snap. So that's why I didn't go ahead and soak these roots, because there was really no point. I'm gonna place this in the middle and the new growth towards the center of the pot, because the growth will continue on this side, and arranging the orchid like this will just give me more time with this orchid in the pot, which is what I want. I don't want to repot it way too often. Actually, let me just tell you, this one was repot. Oops, I forgot to add a date. That's new. But I do believe it was repotted 3 years ago, which is a good time to keep a Cattleya orchid in a pot, considering it's one of those orchids that prefers things much drier. The medium itself doesn't go bad all that fast. And if there was more space, I could have kept this orchid in the pot in the same medium for a little longer even, because the medium was still in okay condition. Right, so first layer I said it will be sphagnum moss, then the next layer will be bark. And I like to alternate these layers, just because I'm a control freak, I guess. I don't know. But because I can definitely control the moisture levels and how the moisture travels in the pot. Travels? Yes, travels. Sphagnum moss is so wicking that it will pull on the moisture from wherever it is in the pot, and it will drag it within its mass. So I want to make sure that the layers of moss are connected. By me pre-mixing my potting mix beforehand, I pretty much get a mumbo jumbo of potting medium. I don't know if the moss pieces will touch each other so that they will wick up water all the way to the top or not. I don't like that randomness, let's say. I don't like randomness. If I can control something and make it more efficient, I will. It doesn't take much time to do so. If you're not that type of person, don't worry. Not everybody does what I do, and it's fine. Everything is fine, right? But I have a thing, I guess. I like the way things work in this way. If I just put in a bit of time in this repotting stage, I find that particularly in my environment, the moisture is more consistent throughout the pot. And I did get a few messages throughout the years saying that this is the greatest tip you've learned from me, how to layer the medium in order to have just evenness and not have that dry layer at the top and wet layer at the bottom. And that brings me a lot of joy to hear. I'm happy that I discovered this little trick that helps at least some of you. My tips and what I do will not be suitable for everybody, that's for sure, because we don't all have the same environment. But I hope you can apply stuff that do work for you and your environment as well. And if you find yourself in a similar environment with me and you find my tips great, I'm just so happy. So happy you have an easier life with orchids. That's what I always wanted for this channel, just to find ways to make this hobby more enjoyable, easier, you know, more relaxing. Right, so as we were blabbing, not you, me, I continued to layer my medium bark moss. It's not like a very distinct layer. It's not like moss, bark, moss. Things need to connect to each other a little bit. But generally speaking, you know, there's more moss in this layer and then more bark in the other layer. At the top, I typically add a little bit more moss because it's easier for water to evaporate from the top. Also, due to gravity, it's being pulled down. It's easier to find more water at the bottom than at the top, as experience tells you, of course. So I'm trying to even out the playing field by adding more moss at the top. And there we go. So we have more moisture here. This might actually be the last layer of moss, not very sure, we'll see as we go, but since it might be, I'm just going to place my slow release fertilizer on this layer, and I'm gonna use 1.5 to 2 healthy pinches. That is my measuring unit of slow release fertilizer. This is a big Cattleya. She will be a pretty heavy feeder, and hopefully she will bloom. And when she blooms, she has very large blooms. She will require water and nutrients and all that fun stuff, so the more fertilizer, the better. And I think this will be the last layer of bark, and this orchid is almost done. It went by fast. This is the easiest type of repot you can do. So if your orchid is trying to crawl out of its pot, Awesome, great. You're in a great position to repot it without much drama, much setback. Now this orchid, I could leave it like this, but because I do have these nice clips, I think I'm gonna pin 1 or 2 of the older pseudobulbs just to stabilize it a little bit. Not that I water my orchids at the sink and I move them all the time, but you know, who knows? Who knows how I move an orchid next to it and then I grab this one and pull it out of the pot before the roots had a chance to establish. Who knows? So might as well, I'm gonna stake it a little bit. It's not really doing much, but it's doing enough to maintain this orchid a little bit safer from the menace that is me sometimes. Right, we are good. Let's just write a date on the tag so we don't forget when we repot it. It is the last days of August. Woohoo! Summer is coming to an end. I am suffering terribly due to the heat, as I discovered. Again this year, I had to be out in the heat for various reasons, even for relaxation reasons. If I'm out in the heat too long, it's not good. I cannot handle it. And typically with physical stamina and stuff, I'm good. In winter, no issue. In cooler temperatures, but in heat, my body does not function. Something does not work, and I end up feeling sick and out of energy, and literally sick. That's the best way to describe it. Who dares disturb me? Just my husband. Yes? Sorry about that. I had to take that. It was important. Where were we? I was telling you that even just walking outside while it's hot, yeah, it takes it out of me. Something is wrong. I cannot handle being out in the heat. And yeah, I survive on Gatorade. I typically do not drink like electrolytes and stuff. I'm good with my hydration and everything, but in summer I cannot function without it. Immediately I start to feel like sickly and faint, and I just have a Gatorade, and that thing works like magic. Which is great. This video is not sponsored. I'm just saying, it's in the fridge. In case I need it, it's always in the fridge. And I think I'm gonna have it this way in the summertime, because you never know. Right, but the summer is coming to an end. I cannot wait. By the way, I am starting a new flower bed, a new rose bed in the garden. If you are new to my channel or you missed it, I do have a gardening channel as well where I intend to put more projects related to the garden. I'll link it to it down below in the description. It's always linked in the description of my videos. Head down and check it out, and if you like it, if you think you're gonna enjoy gardening content, do subscribe to it. And for today, this is about it. I'm gonna go and water this orchid. Of course, I never leave my orchids dry after I repot, because I want the roots to start absorbing water as fast as possible. They're long enough to be able to absorb. They have just spent so much time in the air, they're kind of adapted to very low humidity levels. But I find that fresh roots like this, even if they're longer, they can adapt really fast to higher humidity levels if you provide them. So I do suspect that these roots will start to green up within a few days. They will start to absorb. So I have no issue there. And for today, that is about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me today and witnessing this amazing repot. But anyway, this is my technique for unruly Cattleyas, or Cattleyas that I just want to keep on more of the smaller side. And I hope this inspires you if you feel that way, if that's your goal, if you have to do this as well. I hope this helps you out. And with that said, stay tuned for the Orchid Care for Beginners video at the end of the week, which is already filmed. I take on a subject that was requested by one of you, and this is how to travel or transport orchids, which I have done already twice in my life. Hopefully it's gonna be the last. I don't ever want to move with the orchids and with everything ever again, but hey, life takes you that way, right? So I hope that one will help the person who asked me about it. And if you're in a situation of moving, stay tuned for that video. And I blabbed enough for today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me today, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!